Imagine a whisper echoing through 3 millennia, a secret code woven into the very letters of creation. In this realm, one between history and mystery, there lies a hidden world where divine names hum with power as magical numbers unlock reality. Welcome to the Kabbalah, here on Things Visible and Invisible. Kenneth Hanson is an author, academic and founder of Treasures in Time, an organization devoted to disseminating knowledge of the biblical and classical worlds. An adult convert to Judaism, he is associate professor in the University of Central Florida's Judaic Studies program and an author of many books on a variety of subjects, including Kabbalah, 3,000 years of mystic tradition. And he joins me down the line from his home in Florida. Ken, welcome back to Things Visible and Invisible.
Good to be back with you, Seán.
Ken, the word Kabbalah and the subject Kabbalah is one which I think we can probably agree straight off is one much abused, not least because of a certain number of celebrities who have decided to become experts in Kabbalah. So I'd like to, if you don't mind, go back to the actual beginnings of Kabbalah. Rather than thinking of it as a recent Hollywood invention, let's go back to the start of where this comes from. So where would you like to take us?
Yeah, well, the word Kabbalah itself actually is medieval, although it is Hebrew, and it's even ancient Hebrew, but the practice itself developed fully in the Middle Ages. The word means received, that which is received, but its roots in mysticism go far earlier than that, all the way back, in fact, to the ancient biblical prophet Ezekiel. And people have heard probably of the prophet Ezekiel because a lot of ufology is connected with Ezekiel. Here's a young Israelite prophet, a priest actually, who has been exiled far away from the land of Israel into ancient Babylonia. And he has mystical experiences at that point. He has a vision, an incredible vision in which he sees a luminous cloud and he sees strange beings and wheels within eyes, sort of like gyroscopic wheels, and he sees fiery movement and a vehicle, in fact, some kind of throne, the divine throne, as he calls it, which in Hebrew is referred to as a chariot. And the term for chariot is merkava or merkava. The chariot, that's actually the earliest term for Jewish mysticism, which long precedes even the full blossoming of Kabbalah. He has an experience, he has an encounter, and this is absolutely mystical. It is otherworldly. He sees, as it were, God, but he doesn't actually say he sees any of these things outright. There's a certain syllable, a certain consonant, I should say, in Hebrew that's represented by the letter K. It's pronounced ka, but it actually means like or as in Hebrew. He doesn't say he actually sees any of these things. He sees, the English will translate it as it were. He sees, as it were, these fiery beings, as it were, wheels within a cloud, as it were, the divine throne. So he's telling us, not so subtly, that he's having mystical experience, mystical visions, and that becomes the fountainhead of Kabbalah. So generation upon generation, later Jewish mystics built upon this imagery of the chariot. It's a whole branch of ancient Jewish mysticism called Merkava or Merkava mysticism that developed and went through phase after phase.
Well, I think that's really helpful as a beginning point, Ken, but I think we probably need to differentiate a little, I'm sure you agree, in the historical outline between a Christian understanding of the Hebrew Scriptures and a later Jewish understanding of the Christian Scriptures, because many Christian saints and writers have talked about Ezekiel as well, and the links with the temple, etc. So if we could steer a path which is very much the Jewish path away from that. So Ezekiel, we're talking roughly 300 BC approximately, earlier?
Well, the exile into Babylonia began in the 500s of before the Common Era. So that's, 586 BCE was the time of the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, and Ezekiel lived in that same general period.
Okay. And presumably it took a few generations for it to be written down in some form of coherent form or whatever. So I'm trying to work out by the sort of first century AD, the time of the temple, the third temple. Was there a kind of mystical strain within Judaism at that time?
Absolutely. And since you mentioned Christianity, I would comment that if you're looking for commonality between faiths, between religions, even beyond Judaism and Christianity, the place you'll find it is in the mystical stream.
Yes.
Every religion, every faith has an aspect of mysticism embedded in it, and they all seem to be seeking for the same type of encounter. That's the golden thread through all religion. Don't look at their doctrines. They go in all different directions. Look at the mystics. And yes, by the first century of the Common Era, it was well developed. There's been a lot of discussion as to the extent to which Jesus of Nazareth was aware of ancient mysticism, whether he practiced ancient mysticism. I encountered ancient mysticism in my study of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I lived in the land of Israel. I went up to Masada, which is the ancient rocky precipice in the Judean desert that the Romans besieged. Later, it was in the Great Revolt of 66 through 70 of the Common Era. The Romans came and utterly annihilated the defenders of the land, and the last 960 actually holed up on top of this great rocky precipice in the Judean desert called Masada, and they took their own lives rather than surrender. And anyone can go and visit the site now. It's all been excavated, but what was found up there among all of the remains and the debris and even skeletal remains and pot shards, but fragments of ancient Jewish manuscripts. One of them, importantly, called the Song of Sabbath Sacrifices. It's the most ancient, Kabbalistic, mystical Jewish document known to exist in the world. And we have fragments of that found on the top of Masada, of all places. It describes in great detail the ascent of a series of angels who are ascending from the physical temple in Jerusalem up into the heavenly realm, into the realm of the heavenly temple, and they are singing an angelic liturgy, angelic songs as they ascend, and they witness this chariot, these wheels again, the same kind of thing that Ezekiel had described. So we know that this was a well-developed tradition as early as the first century of the Common Era and growing. Jewish mysticism, it was there, and it was the immediate forerunner of what became Kabbalah or Kabbalah.
Now, I know on the last occasion you were on the show, Ken, we had a fascinating discussion about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Obviously, the Dead Sea Scrolls, for many of us, are synonymous with the Qumran and the Essene community and so forth. In your researches, have you seen elements of the sort of this mystical strain, this Kabbalistic strain in writings within the Dead Sea Scroll, or the other information that we have about those, about that community, the Essenes?
Well, sure. We have various non-biblical texts that also seem to go mystical, not quite the extent to which this Song of Sabbath Sacrifices does, which is absolutely Kabbalistic, but the trend is there. The idea of ascent. We see the book of Enoch, for example, parts of which are preserved among the Dead Sea Scrolls that describes the heavenly ascent of the ancient biblical patriarch Enoch into the heavens, where he is transformed into the angel Metatron, this sort of thing. The other ancient texts, the ascension of Isaiah, for example, talks about the martyrdom of the prophet of Isaiah and his ascent into the heavenly realm. So this kind of thing becomes a motif in ancient Jewish literature.
So we know it's there, it's present in first century Judaism. Obviously, Judaism, in a way, there's the division, I guess. Rabbinic Judaism goes in one direction and Christianity goes in another direction. Talk me through those sort of years, the first millennia. What evidence have you got there that Kabbalistic thought, Kabbalistic writings, Kabbalistic teaching was present in Judaism?
Well, the rabbis certainly write about it and reference it. There's the story of 4 rabbis who go into the orchard, as they call it. Now, what does the orchard mean? Well, it's rabbinic terminology for mysticism. And there's serious warnings about that. Because one of the rabbis loses his mind, another one is burned. Only one of the 4 rabbis comes back out of the orchard unscathed, and that's the great Rabbi Akiva. And the idea is this mystical orchard is there, but you must be very careful before you enter it, because you can get off track, you can get off base, you can even go mad. So you have to be well grounded in the Torah, in Jewish writings, in Jewish law, so that you not lose your way. And they were certainly aware of other streams of ancient mysticism. I call it Enochic Judaism, which was enormous in those days. And there's a question about the extent to which Jesus may have been an offshoot of this Enochic trend, and also Essene Judaism. The ancient rabbis were aware of these disparate strains, and they even put a curse upon the heretics, as they called them. So they accepted mysticism, but they said, don't go too far, be careful. And it's interesting that all these disparate branches of Judaism vanished. The Enochic Judaism, the Essene Judaism disappeared. Only Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism emerged out of the cauldron of first century Judaism. And both of them have preserved mystical trends in their own way.
Now, one of the key texts that emerged ongoing from that period was obviously the Talmud, and is still a central text to Judaism to this day. Within the Talmud, do you have much discussion of Kabbalah, or is it a subject that they prefer not to discuss in public type thing?
Well, they don't call it Kabbalah again. That comes in the Middle Ages, but there are early examples. Early breaths, as it were, of the mystical trend, and yes, there are rabbis who are meditating and who are seeking contact with the world beyond, and all of this is an example of ancient Jewish mysticism. There's also what's called the Hechalot tradition that emerges early on. I mentioned the Merkava, or divine chariot tradition. The Hechalot tradition, also reflected in early rabbinic writings, has to do with the throne of God, or the throne rooms, the divine courtyards is actually a plural word, courts, divine courts of the God of Israel. And can we reach a place where we can somehow see into that throne room, where we can enter into God's holy courts? So we go from Merkava into Hechalot traditions. And as scholars, we follow all of this. It's like a thread weaving through until we emerge with, in the Middle Ages, the Zohar, as it's called, which was said to have been written way back in early rabbinic times. They believed that it did trace was traceable all the way back to the early 2nd century of the Common Era.
How much of the emergence of this strain of mysticism within Judaism was as a result of the destruction of the temple and the destruction of the kind of physical elements of Judaism? Do you think in some ways it was a reaction to that there wasn't something present, so people sort of reached for the mystical?
Well, that's a good possibility. However, as we learned from Ezekiel, as we learned from the book of Enoch, this whole Merkavah tradition, the Song of Sabbath Sacrifices, this was around and well established before the destruction of the Second Temple. However, it was not removed from a sense of deep alienation. And certainly the destruction of the temple fed that alienation, that sense of alienation. But the alienation was around well before there was the destruction of the first temple. That's why Ezekiel found himself in exile in Babylonia. And Jews have experienced catastrophe after catastrophe throughout their long and troubled history. And that fed the sense of alienation that increasingly caused Jews to look outward and beyond. And as I mentioned, it flowered in the period of the Middle Ages when Jews were again experiencing great persecution and great alienation.
Okay, Ken, so let's talk about the Zohar, its creation. It's a text which even today people still reference as the kind of catalyst or the key text for what we know as Kabbalah. Where did it come from? I mean, from your researches, how did it come about? How did it end up getting written down? And do we have an author?
Yeah, well, it was undoubtedly composed and comprised by a Jew in Spain named Moses de Leon in medieval Spain, although, again, he claimed that it had been composed way back in antiquity and preserved uncannily across the centuries and discovered in the land of Israel by the great Rabbi Nachmanides, who brought it back to Spain, and then somehow it ended up in the hands of Moses de Leon, and all he was doing was copying it. But scholars really don't buy that it was that ancient. It's written in a very rich Aramaic, but the language of it, everything about it, doesn't look like it came from ancient Israel. And though, of course, true believers in Kabbalah may disagree with me on this, but it's pretty much established that it was in fact composed by Moshe or Moses de Leon in medieval Spain. And as I mentioned, Jews were already experiencing great persecution, great alienation in medieval Spain. Now, just because Moses de Leon wrote it and ascribed it to an earlier period of time, that doesn't impeach its content. Because it's what it actually says in terms of its contents are very, very rich and powerful indeed, and really represent the flowering of the Kabbalistic tradition.
Okay, Ken, believe it or not, we've come to the end of this first episode on Kabbalah, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. In the next episode, we're going to unpack really what the Zohar, what Kabbalah actually is, because you've done a very good resume of how it came about and how we've come to the situation we're in. But I presume some of our audience, and myself included to some extent, are still scratching our heads wondering, okay, I get all of that, but what actually is Kabbalah and why should we be concerned about it? So for now, tell people, Ken, where they can find out more about you and where they can pick up your book on Kabbalah.
Well, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Jews, God, and History, and I am creating regular YouTube episodes there, and I also then have links to website and other places where you can find me. Even a good Google search will find me, but I do recommend you check out my YouTube channel.
Absolutely. Okay, for now, Ken, thank you so much for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.